Shivers, The Enchanted Attic by M.D. Spencer, Chapter 12. So mournful and melancholy was the melody that Nicole wanted to weep. Someone was playing the cello solo, all alone, with no orchestra. The sound was rich and full. The music rose and fell so sorrowfully it broke her heart. The high notes ached with anguish. Then the tune dropped low with despair. It was music fit for a funeral. Nicole turned as pale as her sheets. She sat up and pulled them to her chest. She scooted back on her bed into a corner where one wall met another and tried to force herself to breathe. For a terrifying second, her lungs refused to work. Try as she might, she could not breathe in, could not get air into her chest. Someone or something was in the house. Nicole trembled with fear. Her eyes bulged. The hair on the back of her neck stood up. The sound of the cello rose into a wail, vibrating with loss and sorrow. Nicole felt a tear run down her cheek. This, she knew, was the music of death. Nicole felt her way through the next few days as if she were moving through a thick fog. She was so preoccupied she was almost unable to see her surroundings. In the morning, she dressed in clothes that didn't match. At breakfast, she ate her cereal so absent-mindedly she missed the bowl with her spoon. At school, she couldn't concentrate on what the teacher was saying. On the ride home, she didn't hear when her mother asked questions. "Mike, I'm worried about her," her mother said to her father one evening when Nicole had happened to be passing by the kitchen door. "She's just having a little trouble adjusting to the move," her father replied. "It's to be expected. Leave her alone and she'll be fine." But the truth was that Nicole was worried about herself. The morning after hearing the cello, she had awoken huddled in the corner into which she had crawled in fear. She had not felt well since. Her stomach hurt, her head ached, and her ears throbbed with the melancholy music. She couldn't get it out of her head. She heard it when she dressed. She heard it when she ate breakfast. She heard it in class. Wherever she went, the deep, rich notes pulsed through her brain and made her sad and afraid. She knew she had to do something. She would not last long like this. She'd have a nervous breakdown, or become the first 11-year-old in history to get an ulcer. But there was no way she could tell her parents. They would never believe her. She'd never be able to convince them that mice were playing cellos in an attic that was not there, especially since they had not heard the noise for themselves, and Nicole knew they had not. The next morning, she had asked Casey if she'd heard anything unusual in the night. Casey had said no. If Casey hadn't heard it, her parents hadn't heard it. Casey slept on the second floor like Nicole. Their parents slept on the first floor, even further away from the attic. There was another way Nicole knew her parents had not heard the music. They had not run from the house screaming in fright, their hair standing on end. They had not piled into the car, leaving all their belongings behind, and zoomed down the road, leaving this strange old house for good. Which they most certainly would have done had they heard eerie midnight music coming from a place that wasn't there. So Nicole was on her own. But she had to do something. She could not go on living this way. As far as she could figure, there were only two things she could do, and both were impossible. The first was to flee, to run away and get as far from whatever unearthly thing was making the noise as possible. She couldn't do that because her family wouldn't come with her. They'd have her committed. The second was to confront whatever was in the attic, face it down, and make it scared instead of her. She couldn't do that either, because there was no way to get in there. She thought about it long and hard, as her stomach tied itself in knots and her homework piled up undone. She decided in the end that option 2 was less impossible than option 1. She couldn't run from whatever was terrifying her. She had to face it down. Maybe the essence of not being a scaredy cat was not having any choice. If she really put her mind to it, she thought, she could find a way. She knew she was smart. She just had to get as determined as Casey. She needed to get into the attic.